Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Bend. My name is Debbie Boone, and I am the host. And today I'm going to introduce you to a very, very specialized licensed veterinary technician who is a feline expert. I lost it again, Ellen Carozza, right? Did I do it right?
You got it.
I got it. Okay. So Ellen, she caught my attention on LinkedIn because she was talking a lot about the Year of the Cat, which we are currently in, and also was very interested in some of the work that she's done. So I'll give you a little bit of her bio. She is internationally recognized for her feline advocacy and her no-nonsense practical teaching skills in feline medicine and nursing. She's been practicing as a licensed veterinary technician since 1998 and solely in feline medicine since 2002. She also runs the Chris Griffey Memorial Feline Foundation. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. She was recently received the Fetch DVM 360 Innovator of the Year Paraprofessional Award for 2023. So she's not only special, she's famous. And she, as one of the organizing members for the latest AVTC Specialty Clinical Practice Feline, she is one of 4 people to currently hold the elite title as a veterinary technician specialist in feline clinical practice. Her goal is to always be part of the process to help empower the people who work with cats, enhance the experience for the cats and owners at the practices they entrust their pets' care at, and evolve and share the methods on how we work with cats for the veterinary technician in practice. So Ellen, thanks very much. She's had a long day at work and graciously agreed to jump on here late in the afternoon and share her experiences with me. So thanks for coming, Ellen.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. So tell us, I always like to have the origin story. How did you decide to get into veterinary medicine?
I didn't want to be in veterinary medicine. I wanted to be a funeral director. And my mom thought that was creepy. And she goes, and we were at like one of those the college open house things. And she's like, how about working with animals? You grew up with animals. You like animals. And I was like, meh, really don't want to, but like, okay, I really don't have a choice because my parents were, they're the ones going to be like sending me off to college.
Yes.
So 1994, I went to SUNY Delhi, graduated in 96, and I have been practicing as a veterinary technician since. My goal was to ultimately go to vet school.
Okay.
And I was in the Cornell connection through Delhi, but some circumstances occurred in my life and that prevented me ultimately fulfilling that. Moved to Virginia instead to be with my husband, and I have been planted here ever since.
Okay. All right. And you're in Herndon, Virginia, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
I read that now.
Northern Virginia, right outside of DC.
Right outside of DC. Yeah, I've spent some time there. I was used to teach all the Patterson Communication and Client Service classes, and I think I've been everywhere because I taught for like 11 years and got all over the United States and teaching those communication classes. So you talked about your goal of being a veterinarian. I was one of those too. I have a degree in animal science from NC State, and I wanted to be a veterinarian. But I figured out over the years it was better to be their boss than to be one. And so that was how my career went along. But I always like to, when we're talking about the bend, there's always a bend in the road. And tell me what was your big curveball that got you to where you are today?
Oh gosh. It was one of those things that I started out as a primate technician in New York. Like I actually worked for LEMCEP. I worked for the Laboratory for Experimentals and Medicines and Surgeries and Primates under Dr. Mahoney, who is dearly departed, but he was a fantastic veterinarian, and he was very British, and so he's very proper. And I remember when the lab closed, and ultimately I was like, well, now what am I going to do? And that's when I was still transitioning and moving to Virginia and everything and making that big decision. And I was like, I'm going to work for the National Zoo. Tried to like get in there, like, circling things in the newspaper and all this other kind of stuff. Couldn't get a job doing that. So I wound up working for, the smaller, which are now the really big gun corporate practices. I was at VCA, I was at Banfield, and I was like, man, these cats are just not getting the level of care that like I was taught about. Like, man, people are mean to cats. Like, I
Mhm.
don't understand this. And I didn't like that philosophy. Like, I would come home from work every single day going, I hate my job because we're supposed to be kind and compassionate to these animals, and we really weren't. I mean, they were scruffing cats. I mean, just the handling alone, and the anesthesia was still kind of like old timey in a
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And it's like when we just did like a cc of ketamine and a half a cc of Valium, and
Yeah.
like hope for the best. I hope this kitty wakes up, which is not appropriate anymore. And you knew it being in the field, you're like, well, we could be doing better, but why aren't we doing better?
Mhm.
And I remember seeing an ad in the paper in the New York, the Washington Times, and it was for a Capital Cat Clinic, not too far from where I already was. And I'm like, I could drive to that, even though I was driving an old Alfa Romeo at that point in time. My husband would also drop me off to work if my car broke down. And so I applied to them, mailing my resume in and calling them obsessively saying like, I haven't heard anything. Have you guys like looked at it? And finally they're like, please come in. We'll give you an interview. And it was this adorable little farmhouse in the middle of Arlington, and there was cats everywhere, and people were kind, and the veterinarian genuinely loved cats, and it was just like this wonderful homey feel that you didn't feel like you were in a hospital. And I was like, this is amazing. Like I want to be here.
Mhm.
And ultimately I was there,
You
and
were
I was
there.
there for 20 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so it completely molded me to who I am
Mhm.
as a technician in feline medicine, because I learned to evolve and advocate and put my foot down about things,
Mhm.
and had a clinician, Dr. Marcus Brown, who was one of those doctors that really truly felt that if someone was there to learn and they wanted to make a difference, I mean, he was going to allow you to make a difference. And so I'm very grateful for that 20-year experience that I had with them. And then ultimately they sold the practice, and I moved on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow. It's so funny. I think I showed you years ago. I think it was 2011 maybe. I had created a whole little packet of information, and I was presenting it to a sales team for Zoetis, and it was called Cats Need Care Too. And it was about how we
mhm.
could communicate better to cat owners, and even asking our dog owners, do you have a cat at home? Because we didn't even know. So many times they would be multiple pet owners and the cats would just be in the house, and they thought, oh, well, they don't need anything. And then the other thing
Yeah,
I'm sure that you're an advocate against is the declaw, and that people thought that was an automatic thing, that like you
yeah,
automatically declawed your cat. Now, I started in practice in 1985, and so these were things that we didn't know any different, right? That was a routine thing to do, is to declaw cats, and it probably when you desexed them, that was the time that that was done. Scruffing was taught because whatever you do, you don't get your doctor bit, right, or scratched. And I just remember this story I tell because I'm fear free certified, and I've been on the Fear Free Advisory Council since its inception because I'm a huge advocate for fear free handling. And I was told this story about this cat that belonged to one of my clients, and he found it in a dumpster that was a female cat that he had named Dexter. And Dexter was a tortie, and they can be a little spicy. So Dexter would come in, and the owner would be all bloody because and this carrier was nasty. I mean, you could tell probably been sitting either in the
yeah.
attic or the garage for a year. And he had grabbed the cat and stuffed it in there. and then brought it into the hospital. And then of course, we had to try to get Dexter out without damage to ourselves or her. And this cat was explosive. I mean, it was tooth and nail. And I really feel like she was found on the city streets of New York and maybe kind of grew up battling rats bigger than she. So she was tough. And I looked in the door one day because we had windows in our exam room doors, and I saw three grown men pinned against the wall by this cat that was out in the floor in the room. And, at that time we just thought, oh man, this is just a bad cat. But faithfully, its owner would bring this cat in for care, and we would vaccinate it, get our big army blanket out and vaccinate it. And looking back now, after learning all the things that I know from Fear Free and cat people like you who teach, is that this cat was just fighting for its life. It was absolutely terrified and doing everything it could to live. And we did not acknowledge that. So we could do so much better. So thank you for advocating for kitties, because, they're really very cool. And
They
it,
are. I think there's like a very underrated species to work with.
yeah,
And people are like, ew, you only do cats only. I'm like, it's the best. Come to the cat side. You don't know what you're missing.
yeah. I remember one of my staff went to work for the cat clinic down the road, and she'd been with us for quite a while. And she went down there, and she came back and had lunch with our staff periodically because she left on good terms. And I said, how is it? She said, it's so quiet. That was the thing she remembered. It was just so pleasant and quiet because the cats are chill and they're not, the dogs weren't barking. And, of course, a lot of that was stress too when you had a bunch. And of course, we had a big kennel in our hospital. So it was a lot of barking going on.
Mm.
But yeah, this is really interesting. So you just got deeper and deeper into cat knowledge.
Yeah.
And so you're only one of four VTS and cat. So
Yep.
tell me, how were you involved in kind of creating or yeah, I bet so, creating that specialty?
Yeah. So Dr. Brown was always very heavily involved with the American Association of Feline Practitioners, which is now the Feline Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they were like the coolest group. I looked up to them. I was like reading the journals all the time. And I was like, if a doctor can be specialized, why can't a technician be specialized? And I remember still seeing and reading in like, Veterinary Technician magazine, and when, websites and stuff were coming up, and I was seeing that there was emergency technicians that could be specialized and stuff. I'm like, why can't we do this? And I remember reaching out to one of my colleagues, Liza Rudolph, and she's like, oh yeah, there's like there's currently one for canine feline in
Mm-hmm.
general practice, but there's not feline only. However, we're going to have to do a lot of heavy convincing why we need feline only. And I don't want to go back and work with dogs. I will politely say, I do not enjoy working with the canine species. And that's cool. I'll pet your dog on the head and everything. I'll be kind and stuff like that. But I personally am not comfortable working with that species. I love cat. I speak cat. I can do cat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I don't see a difference if there are feline hospitals and feline specialty veterinarians. Why can't there be specialty feline technicians?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get together with a group of other heavy hitter technicians who had a lot of leg room
Mm-hmm.
and reach out to them and say, hey, can we get together and discuss this and start formulating what we need to formulate?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually there was only 3 of us that fit the bill that NAVTA wanted, that we could be on the committee that ultimately created this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was me, Paula Plummer, and Jan Yarsalev. And Jan worked feline only, and I believe she worked for the late Dr. Colleran on the West Coast. And I was feline only on the East Coast. Jan also has a VTS in dentistry, which is hardcore.
Oh yeah.
And Paula works at, I believe, Texas A&M, and she has emergency and internal medicine under her belt as a VTS. So I had some really good colleagues that we were able to be like, this is what we want. This is what we expect a specific feline person to be, because Jan was working in her practice. Paula was actually fronting feline handling and a feline program at the university. So she had all of that in conjunction with what we were doing. And here I'm coming straight up feline only general practice. So we had a lot of stuff we had going there. You have to come up with a couple hundred exam questions. You have to come up with a knowledge list on what we expect you to know and learn and have under your belt to be considered like an expert, which is, when you look at it, it's like the knowledge base is the equivalent of like a master's degree on what we expect from you. You have to know how to write case logs, case reports. You have a skills list of greater than 100 skills that you have to master, not just perform, that you are actually utilizing in practice and have done, or your practice offers it. And then you present it to the AVTCP board, and they look at it and they give you feedback, and you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally, they're like, okay, everybody agrees on this. We can now create this subspecialty. Because they also have exotic, they also have large animal, and they have like canine feline, which is perfectly acceptable. It's just 2 species versus just a single species. You're going from there. We had to wind up taking like our own test and everything. We've had a lot of people try, and a lot of people don't pass the first time. It is so intense that a lot of people don't realize, especially the veterinarians, the amount of work that is involved for your technicians to achieve a specialty. That is something that you should be like, if your technician becomes a specialist, hang on to them, because they are a wealth of information and skills and stuff to have in practice. And I really don't think that we are utilized enough that way, or actually acknowledged for our knowledge base. I mean, we work laterally with our veterinarians. We don't work under you. We're lateral, and we help you achieve your goals. So we ultimately, last year, we had our very first student finally pass, and that was Caitlin Dutcher-Lundy. And she is a fantastic technician. I've known her for several years. I mentored her, Paula mentored her, Jen mentored her, and she actually took this thing 4 times before she finally passed.
Wow.
So it is so intense, but it is so worth it. And now she gets to call herself one of our elite members of a feline VTS. And there's only 4 of us. And, you know, we put a lot of work into it. And when you finally get that achievement of having this type of subspecialty, you're considered like the pioneers of it. And you can only look at your specialty moving forward. Like, what can we do for the next generation of technicians coming into practice? And that's ultimately our goal. We want to keep moving forward, keep evolving, and keep technicians interested in feline medicine.
Yeah. This is amazing. I think you made a point that I really want to bring to the audience, and that is the true challenge of being a VTS. It is very intense in all the specialties. I have good friends Mary Berg is a friend of mine who's VTS dentistry. Others who are specialty in emergency and critical care and anesthesia, the anesthesia nerd, Natasha. So we, as a profession, are not recognizing that these folks have such an incredibly deep knowledge of their subject matter. And to the point that you made, you're talking about the testing and all the work that goes into it. I'm a CVPM, and there's only 1,000 of us in the United States, and that's been going on since the 90s. But people go, this is really hard. I have to pass my test. I have to do all this stuff. Well, if it was easy, it would be meaningless. It has to be hard in order to have any clout behind it. But I have seen, sadly, on many technician threads where people will get their VTS, and the first question is, well, did you get a raise for it? And no.
Isn't that terrible? No.
Stunned. I am stunned.
That's a slap in the face.
It is. So practice owners, I am calling you out. If somebody has gone to this much effort to be that committed to their work, then by golly, you need to acknowledge that, and you need to pay them, and you need to let them do their thing.
Yes.
Get out of their way. So there's my public service announcement for veterinary.
That's a good public service announcement. Much needed.
Yes. Good grief. So yeah, I mean, and of course, right now I'm kind of helping a couple of friends of mine, and we're starting a CSR association because that's
Mhm.
another ignored part of our profession.
Yeah.
And we're looking to do very similar things to where we have certificate levels and then certification levels for people who are running the front desk, because that's
Mhm.
where the whole thing starts. They're
Yeah.
laying the groundwork for the team to be able to do their work. And a lot
Mhm.
of times they're turning people away by their lack of knowledge. And the horrible fact of somebody calls up and says my cat hadn't been to the litter box in 2 days, right? We need to train people who know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Get your cat in
Absolutely. I
immediately.
see it all the time still.
Yep. Yep. And
The
I mean,
triaging is so important.
it is important. It is so important. So I'm really curious. So you moved and you're immersed in feline medicine, and then how did you decide that you needed to be the one who was going, or the one or the three who was going to create this VTS? Because were there other people out there who, have worked in feline practices or just not as forward
I don't know. I
thinking?
think it's because I have the biggest mouth, in all honesty. I was brought up to question everything, and I would question everything all the time. And I was probably like that annoying, like, well, why? Well, why? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do this? And I'm the kind of person that is not pushy, but I'm direct.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I'm from New York, so it sounds like I'm always shouting, and I'm Italian American, so it always like comes across as like ah, and really it's not. I just want an answer, and sometimes I don't like the answer I'm giving, and I'm going to ask why, and I'm going to continue pressing forward until I get an answer that I feel is appropriate.
Mhm.
I mean, if I might as well have been the one, like, whatever. Okay, I'll make some enemies in the process of doing it or whatever. And people get to know you over time, be like, oh yeah, she's really not a bad person. She's just like New York Italian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Focused.
but
Really
it was like one of
focused.
the ones that I didn't see any headway from anybody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You just,
I'll do it.
yep.
I'll do it. Fine. Nobody else wants to do it. I'll jump in the pool first.
There you go.
Might be an alligator in there. I don't care. We're jumping in.
It's okay. That's okay. So I was going to ask you, just some advice about people and cats. And
Yeah.
I, one of the things I mean, and I've never worked as a technician. I've had cats, at one time I had 13 cats, 11 dogs, a horse, and several cows because I grew up in the country and you could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But less is more. And I think people try to manhandle
Oh yeah.
animals. And I kind of, you going back to where you were interested in the zoo medicine. I've had friends who were technicians who actually worked in in Denver Zoo, and thinking about, you cannot manhandle a hippopotamus. You have to
Mm-mm.
have its cooperation. And the big pushback on all this stuff and is, oh, but we're in a hurry. We're in
Yes,
a
I have
hurry.
15 minutes to get this cat done. And
Yeah.
cats don't have 15 minutes. Cats need like 30 minutes.
Yes. And 10 of that's walking around just acclimating themselves to
Yes,
their
10 minutes
environment.
is acclimation and de-escalation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the time you can actually use it just to schmooze with the client at that point in time.
Exactly.
Get a little bit more information about them,
Mhm.
find out what's going on while the cat is just exploring the room. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't realize that even though we say cats are domesticated, they're very quick to revert back to their ancestral tendencies because they are prey and predation species. I always like to, when I'm teaching my staff and stuff like that, I'm like, look at cats as opportunistic, right? They
Mhm.
love routine. They love this, I'll scratch, maybe I'll scratch, my back and like your back and my back in return kind of thing. And the more that you give them the opportunity to participate on their terms, the more likely you're going to win them over.
Mhm.
So you give them that opportunity to be the ones to make that first contact. And it's like people they want to stick that finger out and boop them on the nose or
Oh yeah.
something. That's kind of like when you're doing that, it's kind of aggressive in a way. It's like sometimes if you just hold your hand out and you look away, give the cat the opportunity to come up and smell you and maybe give you a head bump that way.
Mhm.
So you're allowing them to make that first initiation. So you're always giving opportunities for cats. And my staff is like, well, now this is so much easier that you explain it that way. So cats are huge into cooperative care, and people don't want to realize that. And you can ruin the entire moment just by touching the cat incorrectly, especially if they're head shy or neck shy because they've had a previously poor experience
Yes.
there. Cats also hate anticipatory touch. You will have to have hands on them at all times once you finally have hands
Mhm.
on them, because now they feel like you're the predator and now they're the prey.
Mhm.
So when you start thinking on more on their level of thinking, they become so much easier to work with. And many times that the clinicians I'm working with, we don't even have to talk when we're working with the cat because we know how to move and modify everything that we need to perform the tasks that need to be done without stressing out this animal.
Mhm.
And normally we can get everything done rather quickly, but the cat now has most of the control of the situation.
Mhm.
And I can handle cats that a lot of people in previous files are like, this is a red dot cat, or this cat needs gabapentin. And I'm like, this is the nicest cat to work with. Like, where did you guys go wrong? And a lot of it is simply because they were holding it down too hard, or maybe the cat feels more secure with its head covered.
Mhm.
So there are things that you'd really need to like modify and understand about them to actually feel more comfortable working with them, and stop being fearful of them, because they know, like they know if
Of course.
someone goes in that room and that person's scared, that cat's going to be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not so sure about you. Like, maybe you're a danger to me, stranger danger.
Yeah.
Um, and
All
this
about
is not going to
energy,
work
right?
out.
It's the energy that you put off. And if you
Yeah,
can kind of
absolutely.
breathe through and relax a little bit and the cat and let the cat chill out and kind of come to you and do its thing. My mom had a great cat whose name was Charlie. He unfortunately passed at 15 last year. But this cat was just chill. And he was, I talked her into taking him. I was working in an animal shelter and I said, oh, this cat is something else. You got to take this cat. So he was very social, but he was going to be in your face. He was going to be on your laptop. He was going to be wherever you were. And she could do anything with this cat.
Yeah.
He became a diabetic. And I thought, gosh, is she going to be able to actually manage his diabetes? Because she has terrible arthritis. She was 89 at the time we was diagnosed. She'd say, okay, come on, Charlie, get up on the table. And he would jump up on the kitchen table and just hunker down so that she could give him his insulin injection.
Yeah.
And then he was done. And so cats can be trained to
Yeah.
cooperate with us. And Charlie cooperated with everything. And
Yeah.
so I know for a fact, in fact, I read a whole article about cats and diabetes on him for today's veterinary business. He was the cover child of the magazine that month.
Oh, yay.
Yay. So this is really, I feel like this is so helpful, Ellen, that people just don't know about that. And when you said something about booping cats on the nose, the first thing I thought about was, how would you like it if somebody did that to you?
Mm-hmm.
It is extremely invasive. I don't even think you should
Mm-hmm.
do it to dogs. I think, let dogs come to you, let cats come to you, let
Yeah, it's
horses
their
come to
personal
you.
space, like
It
their head in their
is.
face. It's like that is for the owner and the cat to share that personal space.
Mhm.
That is the intimate zone of a cat.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things that when you finally get like an actual head boop to your face from another cat that's
Yeah.
not your own, it's
Uh-huh.
like, what did I do to achieve this award?
Yes.
Right? Because you have given me a level of trust and intimacy that's
Mhm.
only shared between the real human animal bond, which is at home,
Mhm.
versus at the clinic. But when you're first there face to face and you smell like other cats or you smell like dogs or whatever, everything else, and meanwhile the cat's like, I don't know you, and you're like, oh, aren't you cute?
Oh,
Like, it's
yeah.
it's not very welcoming, and it sets the tone that this cat is like, hang on a second.
Mhm.
Now you might have that special cat that's like, I love everybody, this is
Yeah.
the best thing ever, go ahead, poke me in the eye for all I care, like I'll let you do whatever
They're
you
out
want.
there.
But the
Yes.
majority of cats are kind of like, hang
Yeah.
on a second, like,
Yeah.
can we shake hands first?
Mhm.
And it's the same thing, the technicians go in the room, they go get the TPR, and they go and they shake hands with a rectal thermometer. Nobody
Yeah.
likes that either. Do
No.
it at the end if you really need to get that temperature on that
Mhm.
animal, unless it's like very, very sick.
Mhm.
Do it at the end.
Mhm.
Like, start all of the really invasive stuff, like get
Yeah.
the cat
Wait,
acclimate, get
wait
used
till
to
the
each other,
last.
buy each other a drink first, something to like actually break the ice a little bit. You
Yeah.
need to, and that's why we're like always encouraging, like, can they have a treat? Are they allowed to have a churu? Like something that I can be like, hey, I'm I'm your friend, not a foe
Mhm.
at this
Mhm.
point in time, and we're going to work with each other, and you can
Yeah.
enjoy your snack while I talk to your human,
Yeah.
and
One of
then
one
move
of
up
the
from
things
there.
I see that veterinary teams make mistakes with is that they consider like the churro and the treats and stuff as a reward for allowing us
Mm-mm.
to do work. But
Yeah.
what it is a distraction from doing
Yes, it's a
work.
distraction.
And I was working with a clinic one day, and the veterinarian had a puppy in there, and he vaccinated, and then he gave it a treat. And I went, and he had to do another set. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
hang on just a minute, do it this way. And I had the
Yeah.
treat in my hand, and I distracted the puppy. I said, now give it. And of course, the
Mm-hmm.
dog's oblivious that he'd even
Yep.
gotten a vaccination. I went, it is a distraction, and we're just
Mm-hmm.
doing it wrong. As someone who is fear-free certified, and I'm sure that with your cat-friendly handling skills, you know these things, but people know just enough to be dangerous, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
doing it right. And so they're not getting results with it. And they find out, and that's when they go, oh, well, we don't have time. This takes too long to do this stuff. But with most animals, slow is fast. And if
Mm-hmm.
you collaborate and go very slow at the beginning, then the cat or the dog or the horse or whatever is not terrified of you when you walk in, and they become more collaborative over time. I have a practice I work with that has been Sophia Yen Gold
Mm-hmm.
from day one, at 20
Yeah.
years in, then all fear free certified. And Dr. White's like, if I can get them in as a puppy or kitten, they always want to come. They always want to
Mm-hmm.
come. And something that they did in their practice that I think you'll appreciate is they built an open-sided cube out of PVC pipe, and they
Mm-hmm.
covered it with a beach towel and of course with feel away spray. So when the people bring their cats in with a carrier, they just open the cat carrier door, and the cats will migrate under this beach towel in this
Yeah.
little cubby hole. They just lift a corner of it up, they do their physical exam, they close it back down, they kind of pat it on the butt, it goes back into its own carrier, and it's very chill the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have a little hidey hole. So it's just
Yeah.
thinking ahead of how you can help these animals have a better experience. And many hospitals I've been in have the cat trees and toys and things that they can climb on, and perches and the
Mm-hmm.
butterfly bush outside, and all those
Yeah.
things that help the experience be better for everybody. And I am a longtime customer service advocate, and I got tickled because Banfield just came out with their top 3 things that everybody should be doing to um, make 2025 a better year. And one of them is, being cat friendly. And
Mm-hmm.
the other one is client service. And I went, wow, 20 years I've been preaching client service.
Yes.
And
And
you're
why did
probably
it
the same
take
thing
20
about the
years for
cat.
this to happen? Is
Uh,
like the biggest
really?
question.
This is number 2 on the list. I mean, really, client
Cats are the
service?
#1 pet right now.
Yes, absolutely. And
And they
we
can
do
thank
not
the
see them.
internet for that.
Yeah.
They have gotten so popular. I think it all started when the internet really started kind of like bubbling up, and I Can Have a Cheeseburger came out, and people were doing all of the cat memes.
Uh-huh.
And then people like, well, these cats are like really cool. And then everybody starts posting up all about all of their cats, and cats started becoming really more popular,
Yep.
even though they're seen as like an easy to care for pet, that they're independent. They really don't need a lot. They need a lot. And a
They
lot of people
do.
still don't realize that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like why is it taken so long for everybody in veterinary medicine to realize the importance of this species that is has its own little niche in
Yeah.
veterinary medicine, and it's actually quite special. And then once you actually get to respect working with them, because less is more for
Mhm.
them, um, and you know, you're only as good as the people who are teaching you, by the way. So if you have a team of people that are teaching poor tactics, of course, it's a whole cascade effect from
Yes.
there. It's like, why? And it's so refreshing to see people realizing it, but it's sad that it's taken so long for all of this to finally come to fruition. And
Hmm.
I hope all it does is move forward
Yeah.
now.
I
Because I'm
remember.
at the point in my life, like I've been a technician for over 30 years. I'm like, oh, like how much longer can I do this? Like I want to see the next generation, like when I finally like step down and be like, my work is done. You
Yeah.
know, I want to be
But
one of
there's
those
somebody there
people, be
to
like,
fill
I'm
the
proud that this happened.
to fill your shoes. And
Yeah.
that's true. That is absolutely true. Well, I remember very well the first feline only practice that opened in my town in North Carolina. And my practice owner knew the veterinarian because at one time he'd worked in our hospital as a kennel kid. And he said, I don't know, he might starve to death. And because if you go into most practices that are GP, to this day, I could almost, without looking at their database, know that 75% of their database is canine and 25% is feline. And that doesn't mean that's all the owned cats in that practice. That means that's all the owned cats that we've seen. So
Mhm.
it's just, are we not talking about it enough? And people think the cats are self-cleaning ovens. It's a term that came
Yeah.
a long time
And
ago.
then you see a lot of practices put priority to the canine patients.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, why are we prioritizing canine patients? The animal needs to be seen, get it in.
Hmm.
Like they need vaccines, albeit like now it's lifestyle vaccines, which makes things a lot easier for our cats and our clients for
Hmm.
sure. But like, why why do we think dogs need to be seen more than cats? If
Yeah.
anything, cats are like the masters of disguise, and half the time that they're going to be like, hey, really not feeling good, having some issues here. I have a cat that's trying to get my camera over here. Come here, you. Move him out of the way for a minute. The
Well,
whole computer is going to go down.
yeah, it's rare that I don't have at least a cat butt walk across the screen at least one point in time, and
Right,
if they're there because they're going to be involved. Yeah, it's just I'm glad that there's an awareness of the cats. As a business person, I think, well, duh, why not? Why have we not
right.
talked about this? But then getting the public to accept it. I mean, I think that's the same thing with, we talked earlier about the declaw, is that it was considered to be a normal thing to do. And now we know that it's certainly not a normal thing to do, and that it does do damage to them physically and emotionally. And a lot of times
And
they,
we still have veterinarians that advocate for it, which is disturbing
yeah,
in its
yeah.
own right. Like you're supposed to be like, do no harm. And
Hmm.
they're like, well, someone else is going to harm this animal, so I might as well be the one to do it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the strange things that, happened to us recently. We had a client that wanted their cat declawed. And we're like, by the way, state of Virginia, we don't do it anymore. We've never advocated for it. I've always hated it. We will never tell you a practice or promote anything to allow you to go get it done. They went across to North Carolina just over the line, drove 4.5 hours, got it all four paw declaw. Didn't tell us
All
this was
four?
happening. And all four laser
Oh,
declaw. The cat came in for some lab work and stuff because it was having upper respiratory issues and such. And you know how like you kind of do like those little mini exams while you're
mhm.
like just holding the vein so they don't wind up with a hematoma. And we're like, where are your toes? You had your toes 3 weeks ago. Where are your toes?
Oh my gosh.
Went in the room and we asked the client, we're like, hey, were these cats declawed? And they just stopped and they looked at us. And they were like, well, they were fighting. And it's like, no, they weren't fighting. Like these are nice cats. Like
Uh-huh.
what's going on at home? And I remember discussing with my veterinarian the first time they came in that the cats, they were worried about their furniture. And I
Uh-huh.
said, oh gosh, this is, this hard conversation you have to have. They're doing the nail caps and everything. I was like, I will do free nail trims with your cat's entire life if you don't do this, kind of
Yeah.
almost begging.
Yeah.
Went across to North Carolina, had it done, and ultimately they wound up relinquishing the cat to my foundation.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It does not keep pets out of the system. It
Right.
doesn't. That is
No.
a lie.
Yeah. Well, and what gets me is like they do it and then they still don't change the behavior.
No.
So they stick
It
them
makes it worse.
outside.
You give this animal now a problem that it's going to have to live with for the rest of its life. I've had a double knee replacement.
Mhm.
I 2, 3 years later, I'm still in chronic pain. And like,
Mhm.
imagine how cats feel not
Mhm.
having their
Not
toes.
having their
Uh,
toes and for balance. And
uh,
well,
right?
Margie Shirk, who I'm sure you know, is
Oh, I love Margie. She's a good
longtime
friend.
friend of mine, and we did some early work together with the Greenies Oral Health Advisory Council when I've, gosh, first started like 2008 probably. And just remember her. I mean, she took me to school about this stuff, because I didn't know, and I paid attention. And I think we just
Mhm.
need to pay attention to the people who are experts in this species and listen to them and then share that information. The information is out there, absolutely
Yeah.
out there. The specialists know, and there's ways around it. I mean, there's, if
Hmm.
but any animal that you get is going to mess something up. It just
Hmm.
is. And just like a child, they're just going to
Yep.
mess something up. And
Yep.
if you're that worried about, don't get one.
No,
Just don't, just
just
don't.
don't.
Yeah. Well, let's talk
Cats are a
about,
blessing and a curse when it comes to being a pet.
yeah.
You absolutely love them, but they do come with, some downsides. Maybe you're going to have to sweep up that cat litter every day. Maybe you're going
Mhm.
to have to deal with them eating too fast and they regurgitate.
Mhm.
Maybe, there's too many toys on the floor or whatever. But that's what you do when you decide to share your life with a species that's a non-human species.
Right.
Like, there's this language that you have to learn and understand and allow them to like share your space. That's what we're doing. We're sharing space.
Mhm.
And once people like really realize that and then provide the level of enrichment that you're supposed to, like
Mhm.
I would say the vast majority of owners out there do not provide the amount of enrichment that's supposed to be provided for the species
Mhm.
whatsoever. They
Mhm.
are so busy.
Mhm.
They're lazy because we make them lazy. They're
Mhm.
overweight because we make them overweight because there's nothing to do. It's the
Right.
same thing with people.
Yeah.
You're
Oh, yeah.
bored, all you do is going to eat and sleep
Mhm.
versus finding out what makes them tick. What do they enjoy? Um, so there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to being a pet owner and room for improvement for us in veterinary medicine to teach and educate our clients what they need to be doing to enhance their lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think during COVID, people had time and they were home a lot and they did certainly more play and engagement with their animals. And then they went back to work and they got
Hmm.
busy and the kids started
Yeah.
running around and going to sports again and all the things. And then the cats and the dogs and they just got forgotten about. And that's
Knock their routine
no.
off. The cats don't like that.
No, no. And so here we are with behavior problems, and it really
Yep.
has to do with more change of environment, lifestyle changes, and the busyness of people in general. I mean, I know, I have a dog, and I mean, there's places in my calendar I block out so we can go walk. I mean, we walk a lot because he's a dog. And if I
Yeah.
don't, it's, I'm going to have a mess to clean up or he's bored and he's got the screaming Mimi's running around the house and he is on my lap when I'm in the middle of Zoom meetings. But, I want to have a dog. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the advantage of
It's a
having a dog.
responsibility. You
It
have you
is.
have to be
You
responsible for
have
this living creature.
you have to
Sorry.
do that. You have to do that. So let's talk about your foundation because I wanted to you kind of segued into the animals still end up there. Tell me a little bit about it and how it works.
Right. So the Chris Griffey Memorial Feline Foundation came to fruition after we lost a veterinary assistant to suicide. And that was Chris. He was our assistant for 10 years, and it was devastating. And there's not a day that I don't think about him or talk about him in some way that he touched the lives of the cats that we worked with together. And we decided to honor him by being like, like what could we do to turn such a horrible situation into something positive? And he wanted to be a social worker for underdogs of the DC population, especially the sex workers and
Mm-hmm.
everything that were
Mm-hmm.
in DC. He always was helping out with HIPS, which is helping individual, I think, prostitutes survive on the streets. And he was always like advocating for like human care and what can we do? And it's like, well, what if we did something for cats since he worked for us during the
Mm-hmm.
day and at night he had a different career trying to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, I was still fostering and paying out of my own pocket for care for all of these kittens from the animal shelter and other rescues and people that would just dump them off on our doorstep at the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Brown was like, maybe we should just become a legitimate 501c3 instead of working out of like grants.
Mm-hmm.
And so that all came to fruition. And now here, 10 plus years later, we're still doing the same work. We still take in kittens from other rescue groups, other animal shelters. I take in kittens from other states. Like I have an airline stewardess, Janine, that works with us, and she'll fly cats for me.
Oh, wow.
She'll go pick them up, she'll go drop them off. We adopt out of state. We do a lot of FaceTime and Zoom calls and a lot of consulting work for other clinics, other rescue groups, and other veterinarians. They reach out to us, hey, we got this particular pediatric or neonate. We've never seen a case like this before, because that's what our goal is with the foundation is we work with the very high risk neonates and pediatrics that have oddball medical conditions. So really strange things that people don't see or get the opportunity to really work with. Like we'll advocate for that animal. We will publicly share what worked for us. Like, sure, this is our protocol. This is what we did for this kitten that seems like your kitten's having the same problem. Here you go. This is his file. We'll share it with you so you can learn too. So it's all about providing education, getting kittens that need the medical care that they need to get the medical care, and then providing other resources for everybody else. Like I host the Veterinary Neonate and Pediatric Forum on Facebook. I have like 7,000 plus members in that.
Oh my gosh.
And it's for anybody in veterinary medicine. Rescues and shelters are welcome too, but they have to be mindful that you may not ask for a professional opinion because there's no client-patient relationship there. But they can post up saying like, I'm working on this kitten. This is the problem I'm having. Has anybody else seen this? And just the amount of support and everybody else chiming in as this community has blossomed, and it has gone beyond what I thought it would. But it also proves a point that neonates and pediatrics have a very specific place in veterinary medicine, and especially in feline medicine, because the people want that level of care for them. And they're tired of being told, no, that's impossible. So creating this group and creating the foundation, we try to make that impossible possible for somebody else. Even if we're just saving one for them, we've made a difference. And that's what we do. It's at the point now that I've had a couple of estates donated to us. So, we have a nice amount of funding. So we're able to do bigger projects. We have our own stuffed animal after one of our alumni cats, Egbert. And we use that as a donation fundraising thing that we do. We have another sweep of $1,000 coming soon. And that sold out in 3 days the first time because everybody wanted an Egbert stuffy. And we share our stories on social media. This is this cat. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. And you've seen a lot of other rescue groups and veterinarians and stuff like that. Now, actually, I guess feeling more confident sharing this kind of information now, because before I feel like in veterinary medicine, everyone's like, oh, no, you can't share that story, or, it's a HIPAA violation in veterinary medicine. Well, it's not, especially if you own the animal. Share what you want. Let people know what's going on, and let people know that there are people out there that actually want to be successful doing this, because ultimately these are your future patients coming into the clinic. And if we are failing the neonates and pediatrics, what are we doing? I mean, seeing them only from 6 weeks and on, you should be able to see them from in utero all the way to death. And that's ultimately what I would love to see the next generation of veterinarians and technicians be successful with and confident with, that they get to expand their knowledge base and have their little niches that they want. You love pediatrics? Fine, great, let's do it. go out there, step outside the box. You don't always have to follow the directions. The directions are there just to be like, hey, this worked, this worked, this worked. If we do this, maybe we're going to have a problem here. But everything always evolves and changes, and they have to be the change because there really isn't that much literature out there currently on pediatrics and neonates other than what we currently have that's willing to be shared.
Yeah.
And everything should be shared. Knowledge should not be something that I feel should be kept hidden. Like you should always wind up wanting to share that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was working with a practice one day and was a veterinary technologist. And I asked her about training other people on the team to do certain things. And they were not technicians. They were just assistants. And she said, I paid for my education. I understand that, but knowledge hoarded is wasted. I said, I don't charge for everything I teach people. I teach people stuff all the time. And it all comes around, if you can't be selfish with this stuff, that if you know it, you need to share it.
You can't. I mean, if you have a veterinary assistant, and we're going to get into that topic of conversation between the credentialed and non-credentialed, I want my assistants to be top-notch assistants. So I'm going to teach them how I feel is appropriate and what will make everybody safe together, because ultimately they make my job easier.
Yeah.
And it allows me to do my job that ultimately makes my clinician's job easier. And then we get to see more pets.
Yes.
So you have to look at that kind of like a cycle that way. And a lot of people don't. Like, you can't gatekeep that kind of information. And it's like, there are certain things, by law, like you will never be able to do until you go to tech school. I'm sorry.
Yep.
However, for now, I am going to make you the best assistant that I can possibly make you into right now until you decide that this is your career goal or you move on to somewhere else. And the place that you move on to somewhere else, you're going to be stellar. Like, that's what I want to see. And we should be doing all of that for everybody in veterinary medicine.
Yeah. There's no reason not to grow people as much as possible. It just makes life better for all of us. I think a lot about the veterinary burnout, technician burnout.
Yeah.
And but it sometimes we just are eating our young. I mean, it's just a very sad state of affairs when we're not generous with each other and with our knowledge. And I think that some of that is fear-based, and it's, I'm afraid if I teach somebody, they'll be as good as me, or they might be better than me, or then now I'm not absolutely necessary anymore and I can be replaced by this other person. But if you want to be successful in your career, having fear as a mindset is not the way to do it.
And it's the same thing that's happening right now with the discussion of the mid-level practitioner, that all of these veterinarians are suddenly like, you can't have that because that's our job. Meanwhile, you have all these credentialed technicians out there saying, but you're allowing non-credentialed people to perform my job. What's the difference?
Yes.
And that's the uncomfortable topic of conversation that they don't want to have. And it's like, you got to put your ego at the door. Like, everybody has to figure out that we have to learn how to work laterally with each other. And it's not this hierarchy of working in the industry, because that's why everybody's burnt out. What can we do laterally to make things better? And until we actually have like nationwide credentialing and actually figure out black and white, it is in stone, what you can do, what you can't do, and come to an agreement for it, and not have the veterinarians decide this agreement. The technicians have to be on board with this agreement. Then maybe we can evolve better and move forward in veterinary medicine, and instead of making this like, this is my job, that's your job, that's your job, stay in your lane. And that's why veterinary medicine is kind of failing right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a collaborative team that is willing to teach and cross-train each other and share special skills that they have with other people. I mean, everybody I know in general practice generally has a cat whisperer in their team, right? And so let's learn from the cat whisperer how to manage all the cats that come, because one day she's going to have a day off, and we're going to want to have a nice kitty visit and make our lives easier, not come out of it looking like, we've been to war.
Yes, and everybody should speak cat.
Yeah.
You should.
You should. If you're going to see them, you should know. It's like birds, if you're going to handle birds, you need to know how to do it.
Oh, yes.
It's definitely not something you just wing. Sorry, that was a terrible pun. Gosh. Um, so Ellen, I'm curious. I always ask my guests this question. Looking back over your career, what was your biggest mistake in your career?
Is having the difficulty to embrace change when it comes to moving on in the field, because you're so stuck in that I have always done it so long, and
Hmm.
now I have to work with a new group of people, a different mindset, having to have the patience to teach them that you hired me to evolve you.
Hmm.
However, I can't help you if you won't allow me to help you.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that like I have been humbled by in the past couple years after I moved on from my position of 20 years. Like I did a little bit of shelter medicine,
Hmm.
which I've done shelter medicine before,
Hmm.
and I like shelter medicine, but the group was not the right fit of people. It was their way or the highway. And it ultimately wasn't about the animals. And, helping out other practices, going back to canine feline practice, realizing like I really did not like working with dogs.
Hmm.
Um, so it was that realizing that, um, you know, did I make the right thing by leaving in the first place because I didn't like the corporate mindset?
Hmm.
I still don't like the corporate mindset. I'll be honest, but I have learned to adapt to that corporate mindset. I think there's plenty of room for improvement with a lot of these corporates. I think that they still think of the bottom line, and it's not about the patients. It's not about the staff that are making these places successful.
Hmm.
And so that was hard. And yeah, I still think to this day, I'm like, oh, man, when I punched that button and I walked out, did I do the right thing? And ultimately, I feel like I did. I think
Hmm.
it was time for me to step away.
Hmm.
And ultimately, my health was suffering, so
Hmm.
that was like one of the biggest
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I look back at it, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I have regrets, but do I have regrets?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do not regret deciding that cats are my thing. Like cats will always be my thing. Like
Yes.
I love cats. Um, but my avenues now are opened up to do more cat things versus just staying inside a clinic and
Hmm.
just working on the species all day
Hmm.
long. Like I can make a bigger impact to everybody else
Hmm.
now and give them the abilities to be just as impactful at their facility or branch out forward to do
Hmm.
their own thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, now that you've shined a light on this, especially this new specialty, I would expect that there would be a lot of interest in that. And
we have a lot of interest, and I absolutely love it when we get the applications come through and you see these technicians and they write to you because we're also their mentors. I mean, there's only four of us. So for the first few years when it was just the three of us, we were mentoring a lot of people.
oh yeah.
And just seeing their dedication and their desire, and they're just so like, I want this so bad because I know I can make a difference. It's like this huge sigh of relief that you're like, oh my gosh, you guys are out there.
Yeah.
You're out
Yeah.
there. I just need
Yeah.
to get you certified and
Yes.
get you back out there.
Hmm.
But it's tough to
Hmm.
prove your worth of, are you really a specialist material at this point in time, or
Hmm.
do you just need more hand holding and more training and be given more confidence to be able to put your foot down and fly on your own? Because in all honesty, the specialist has to be able to like know how to work laterally with their
Hmm.
clinician and be able to be like, you know what? I agree with you, but I don't agree with you. And be able to have that confidence to say so.
Right.
So there's a lot more to it than just like a person who has like a lot more skills on board. It's a lot up here as well and a lot here
Yeah.
that doesn't get recognized.
Yes, exactly. Well, um, I actually interviewed one of the first master's level veterinary technicians, Crystal Schaeffler. And Crystal, we went into this conversation because of the veterinary practitioner. And I was like, I just don't think this is a very good idea. And she said, I have no intention of practicing. What I think we need, and everybody in her uh, cohort said the same thing. We need teachers. We need
Mhm.
to teach veterinary technicians at a consistent high level because, you're a technician and certainly a technician specialist, but I'm sure you've seen people coming through your practice or other practices that you've taught who have the credentials, but not the knowledge. And this was one of the things that Mary Berg said to me. She said, there's such a disparity in the programs, even though they might be approved, it's inconsistent. And so I feel like,
Very
yeah,
inconsistent. And honestly, it should be technicians teaching technicians, not veterinarians teaching technicians,
yeah,
because veterinarians still don't know what technicians do.
100%.
Unless you are teaching at a technical school, then
Right.
but still they don't advocate for these technicians on a higher level of being like,
No.
no, actually they're really not dumb. They, just because they can draw blood and stuff like that, they learn a lot more, maybe
Hmm.
not at the in-depth level
Hmm.
as a veterinarian, but they know what you're talking about. Like give them a
Hmm.
level of respect. But yeah, when I went to Delhi, I think I had 90% of my teachers were technicians. And I can remember every single one of them. And
Hmm.
to this day, I'm like, I remember this teacher was like kind of like terse and always kind of angry and everything. And then I realized I was turning into her at one point in time because now I understand where she was coming from. Shout
Yeah.
out Caroline Scovey, but it was one of those things like I actually admired because she wasn't like somebody who was mean. She was someone who was like, I'm trying to make you into a good human being here and
Hmm.
advocate and all of this other kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And that's what other technicians need to be doing and supporting each other with
Hmm.
versus just like, you have a clinician coming in, like open up to chapter 3, page 57. We're going to
Yeah.
learn about the heart today.
Yeah.
That's boring.
Yeah.
But if you're taught by another technician and you learn at the level of what the technician's trying to teach you and why we need to learn how to do all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff versus just everything book behind it,
Hmm.
then maybe they'll be more engaged because
Hmm.
you're being taught by your peers.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Crystal said, everybody in my class wanted to teach, and her
Mhm.
position in her hospital, it's a private practice group, but they own 11 veterinary hospitals. And her job is to train everyone. And she said, VTSs taught me in my master's level program, but they
Yeah.
have very specific knowledge in a subject. And
Yeah.
so I was able to learn very specific training in a subject from every
Yeah.
one of these subject matter experts to get that master's level degree. And I went, okay, that makes me feel much better about the program and the fact that it's not. I was concerned that it was wasting people's money because I feel
Hmm.
like we have, as you said, an underutilized group of people who invested in their education, and then we don't let them do anything but a little bit of restraint and cleaning a kennel, and that drives me crazy.
Hmm.
So if we can get a very consistent level of people coming out of the schools where doctors are like, okay, I have great confidence that if I hand this off to my technician, they've got it. They understand it. They know what to do with it. But as it is, first of all, they don't know what they can hand off because every practice act is different. I can remember managing hospitals, and I can't even tell you how long I had been a manager and how confused I was that there were RVTs, LVTs, and CVTs. And are they the same? And how do you decide who's the same? And, is it state to
And
state?
every state is different with what you're
Yes.
allowed to do, all
Yes.
that kind of stuff. Like
I went into a
the
practice.
inconsistencies are like too broad.
Well, I went into a practice in Washington State, an AHA accredited hospital, and saw a technician, a licensed technician, extracting teeth. And I'm like,
Hmm.
ah, and they go, it's okay. In the state of Washington, you can do that. And when
Yep.
in almost every other state, you can't make a permanent physical change to an animal as a technician, but the Practice Act is different. So
Yeah.
it's very,
Virginia, we can extract teeth, but we can't do a gingival flap and we can't section teeth, but
uh,
we can take them out.
but you can take them out.
But we also can't close the gum tissue because that's not considered skin. We can only close skin, but we can't do subcuticular closure. We can only do skin sutures.
Skin sutures.
Make that make sense. The
Yes.
inconsistencies are just
Yes.
incredible.
Well, and there's the confusion, right? So you've got veterinarians coming out of schools in different states, technicians coming out of schools in different states, moving to different states with different practice acts. It's the same thing for the veterinarians. I mean, they're moving around too. There needs to be portability in licensing
Hmm.
if you're considering the shortages that we have. my Lord, don't make you have a license in every state and make the practice acts consistent. And I don't know how to do that because even the state HR rules are different in different states, and it's very challenging. And one of the things I find out working with hospitals in different states, I mean, even sometimes the sales tax laws are like, oh my God, this makes no sense compared to what I'm seeing in other states. So there's quirks in every single state, and it's maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. But when it comes to medicine, I feel like there needs to be consistency, human and veterinarian, across how many credit hours of continuing education you should be required to have. Because if you think about what Dr. Pohl, he hadn't had any CE in like 20 years because it wasn't required. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Most VTSs are required to have 50.
Well, as a CVPM, I have to have 48 every 2 years, consistent 48. So yeah, I mean, it just it's craziness that there's not consistency there. And I don't think the public, going back to our conversation that they don't even know what their cat needs or why it needs to come in, but they don't even know the different rules. I mean, they don't know that the difference between their practices being accredited and, a state inspection. And they don't know, the difference between fear-free handling and manhandling. And so there's a level of ignorance that the public just assumes that we are doing it right. And they assume the same thing for their own human health too, that they're just doing
And
it
then
right.
you have social media that portrays us as the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, but like some of it's truthful. Like you're out there. I'm like, and I have no problem calling people out on social media. I love taking screenshots and being like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Some of the misinformation out there is scary. Like if you are in human medicine, just because you're a nurse or a doctor, that does not give you an automatic DVM or VMD. I am sorry. Please, you tell us to stay out of your lane, stay out of our lane, because sometimes you guys make the worst clients, in all
Absolutely.
honesty.
Human nurse are the worst. The only animal I've ever had inadvertently killed by their owner was a human nurse who gave their dog Advil.
Yeah. I the things people say can be quite frightening online, and I think we need to pay more attention to what they're saying because it gives us a better idea of where we are going wrong educating. A lot of the doctors out there will be like, I think you need to focus more on what's inside of your practice versus worrying about what's online. And it winds up into a whole political discussion, which is not necessary. But it proves the point that we are still not touching the tip of everything that we should be doing as far as client education. Like if you're going to have TikToks and Instagram reels and all that kind of stuff, and all you're going to do is dance in front of stuff and just show animals off, at least make it educational. So you're hitting them at like, I don't know, some subconscious level that they're going to remember it. You have 8 seconds to make an impression. Make an impression.
Yeah.
Make a positive impression that they're going to go, I should bring that up to my veterinarian next time I see him. Or like, yeah, maybe I should go to my vet's office.
Yeah.
Something that we need to educate them differently on their level of now, because right now they really don't have an attention span. And we need to like figure out how we can break into this and make veterinary medicine not the bad guys.
Yeah. My favorite teaching tool for clients was a picture of ocular larval migraines. And it was a child's eye, and it came from the CDC. And when people are like, I don't really know, I'm like, you got kids? Yeah. Well, look at this. What is that? That is a parasite in this child's eye. And this is a possibility if we don't take care of this stuff. There's zoonotic diseases and transmissions, and people are, oh, he doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. Well, and and I have to say that I have friends who don't have their dogs on heartworm preventative, and I live at the beach. I mean, this is like Mosquito Alley, and she's just moved. I went, you have got to put your dog on preventative. He's too old to be treated because he's 11 and he weighs 4.5 pounds, and you absolutely must do this. And so, and the same thing for cats. You can't treat a cat for heartworms. You've got to prevent a cat from getting heartworms because otherwise it's just too dangerous. So we need to talk about those things. We really
Yeah.
do. And I think there's a really interesting book called High Conflict that a reporter for the New York Times wrote, and it has to do with uh, the skepticism of the public that, and it's being fed by misinformation a lot, but we're not spending the time to communicate well anymore. And people are picking up bits and pieces and then sharing stuff they haven't even read because they pick
Hmm.
two lines of it and oh, this sounds like I should share this with other people. And some of the stuff, like you said, I've read online. I'm like, holy mother of God, this is going to kill somebody if they
Oh
continue to do
yeah, and
this
I
stuff.
have no filter. I fire right back.
Oh my gosh. Like,
I mean, like someone has to say something, and I'm like, no, you're wrong,
yeah,
and this is why. Let me provide you with a source, and people
yes,
will fire back at you. I'm like, okay, can you cite your sources because I can.
because I can. Yeah,
Like that's fine. You want to say that? I'll be seeing your dog at a veterinary hospital sooner rather than later.
yes, yeah.
Like the non-vaccine movement right
Mm,
now is
mm,
scary.
mm,
Okay, well, we're going to be seeing all your puppies for parvo and stuff, and you're going
mm.
to learn a $5,000 to $10,000 lesson or a dead dog.
Yeah.
Same thing with kittens. Like all these rescue groups are dealing with pan Luke and stuff every year.
Mm,
I mean, and they are the ones rescuing these poor little kittens outside
mhm.
that are already sick. And
Yeah,
then you have all these owners going, well, now I don't want to vaccinate my cats.
yeah,
That's why lifestyle vaccines came
mhm.
out, but you still need to get your kitten done because their immune systems suck.
Yeah.
And they don't want to see this. They are being fed so many lies online,
Mhm.
and it's damaging veterinary medicine. And you can't just depend upon the set group of people that are loyal to you coming into the clinic to keep your practice open. You can't.
Well, and you have
You
to
have got to
understand
reach them somehow else. And if you're going
it.
to use social media, use it
You
wisely.
use it right, use it. Yeah, it's not, it can't just be fluff. You got to put some serious information out there. Well, the other thing is that there's a bonus if I don't vaccinate because I heard on social media that this is a negative thing. Well, then I don't have to cost it doesn't cost me any money either. So there's
Hmm.
that side bonus of yeah. So the other part of this equation is let me figure out how to make it easier for people to afford it
Hmm.
because we have always been this all or nothing profession where people walked in the door and we hit them with all their vaccines and all their blood work and all their tests, and they walked out with a $500 bill and go, oh my God, the vet is expensive. But
Hmm.
if we either do like wellness plans or we divide up the visits a little bit here, a little bit there, first of all, it's better for the animal, I believe. I mean, in my medical opinion, which I have no training whatsoever, but I just think it's a little bit easier for you to do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And the perception of expense goes dramatically down because you're paying a third, a third, a third rather than one time. And it's easier for people to afford those things and they
Yeah,
don't.
and the likelihood of any kind of adverse responses to vaccines go down,
Yeah.
especially in the smaller animals and the animals that have known sensitivities. We
Yes.
know that.
Yeah.
It's okay to be like, okay, today we'll do your distemper, 2 weeks we'll do your lepto. Like, just space things out.
Yeah.
So you're actually telling your client, like, I hear you and your
Yeah.
concerns. You're really concerned about this.
Yeah.
I still want your pet vaccinated because you go to the park, you do all this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
but let's break it up for you so I can still have you trust me
Yeah.
because I'm in for making sure that your pet is going to be safe in the long
Exactly
run
right. Exactly right. When there's a lot of people who are like, oh, such,
versus trying to get it over with like right now.
oh, well, I had an older veterinarian in one of my classes one day, and he went, Debbie, they won't come back. And I went, you know why they don't come back? Because you make it a horrible experience. I was teaching a
Mhm.
communication and client service class. I said, you make them wait, you give them a rude receptionist at the front desk. You come into the room 30 minutes past their appointment time,
Yeah.
you talk over their head and manhandle their animal and send them out the door with a $500 bill and wonder why they're upset. I mean,
Hmm.
we can change all of that and have it a great experience and people will be happy to come and bring
Yeah.
their animal to you. But we've got to learn to do a better job. And we're in a profession that gets into it because they like animals better than humans, and
Mhm.
and it's a challenge.
Unfortunately, you have a human shaped balloon tethered to that little rope that's attached to that animal.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. I've never seen a pet drive itself to the vet.
Hmm.
There's always a person behind it. Yeah, person behind it. Um, so Ellen, you talked about doing a lot of things in veterinary medicine and advocating for the cat and getting the feline VTS going. What is the value of networking to you? I mean, how do you build connections? Because obviously it takes a village, right, to get this stuff done.
I think a lot of it has to do with like definitely go to your veterinary conferences. That's where the networking is.
Mhm.
Get out of your groups of people that you're familiar with. Go up and talk to somebody else. Talk to the vendors. Talk to the reps and everything like that. Really get to know people and actually contact them, talk to them, make friends with them. And unfortunately, I think one of my biggest reputations in the industry amongst everybody in the cat world is I'm the person that connects somebody else to something else and make them successful.
Mhm.
So it's nice being that person that you can be like, I know the right person that I can put you in contact with to help you out with a project that you're working on, or to think that I think you're the right person that should be part of this study, or and that's the way you have to look at evolving things is when you network stuff like where can I put people together or just have people meet and help each other out because we're not going anywhere if you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to make friends and influence people,
Yes.
um, and get out of your comfort zone. Like a lot of my colleagues are veterinarians in feline medicine. I have, only a few people in veterinary technicians that a big handful that I could call like real true colleagues that I can like lean on if I need something. A lot of them are veterinarians.
Mhm.
And they know my level of work. They know I can connect people, and they know like I'm one of those people that I have no problem going up to somebody, introducing myself, and being like, "How can I help you, and how can you help me?
Yes.
Because I want to do better."
Yeah.
And so when you make it like just part of your attitude of networking and
Mhm.
stuff, you can go very far if you actually just walk up to somebody that you're not comfortable talking to and introduce yourself. If you stay in your little tiny bubble, you're not gonna move and you're not gonna progress. You're not gonna be able to have the opportunity to get speaking engagements, all that kind of stuff, and become known to be doing things.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the things that, you have to look at when you're networking.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. My favorite thing is I love the cats in the background now. And he's got a bow on. That's cute.
Oh,
Um,
that's low key. Yeah. Yeah,
but
they're all meandering around because my husband's getting ready to cook dinner in a little bit. So,
so the excitement is happening. Yeah. It's when you look at it like, how can I help you? How can I connect you with somebody that may can help you?
mhm,
Or how can I connect you with somebody that you may can help? Then,
right,
it progresses and people appreciate that in you. They get to
right.
know you as that person who can connect you with the right people. And then, you definitely grow in your career that way. I feel like a lot of times people go, oh, it's a dead end job and you can't get anywhere. Like, really? I started
Mhm,
as a part-time receptionist and
yeah,
I ended up being the president of the consulting association. So don't tell me
yeah,
that stuff, right? You
yeah.
can do it. You can do it.
You got to just push forward.
Yep. You just got to keep pushing and don't be afraid. I mean, I feel like I see people in jobs that they're unhappy with and they just stay there. And I feel like you could get out. There's no reason you have to stay there with
Mhm,
this terrible person that's your boss or some toxic person that's your team member. There's opportunities out there in the world where practices are good. I'm going to ask you this one last question and then I appreciate your time because your husband's cooking
sure.
something, so we got to let you off. But you've been doing this 30 years. I've been doing it 40. Do you feel like we are talking too negatively about our profession and that's all we look for is the negative?
Yes, I think we're way too negative about our profession. And unfortunately, we're in a bad point in the profession that it's hard to speak about it in a positive light.
Hmm.
And so that's why I always say find something you really like doing in veterinary medicine and focus on that and share as much as you can and be joyful about it when you're sharing it because yeah, it's a very negative field and it's so easy to stay in the negative versus being positive. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a group effort to stay positive, and I think if we had support from the top, it trickles down to the bottom. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people be a lot happier. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's so negative right now. And I'll be honest, I share a lot of negative stuff because it's frustrating.
Mhm.
But there's also, I think the majority of the time I'm happy just sharing my cats. I love sharing their stories. I love sharing the success that I do. And that's what made my um, persona a little popular in a
Mhm.
way, that
Mhm.
people like to see that they're like, hey, she's being really confident. She's allowed to do this kind of stuff. She's a bit not bossy in a sense, but assertive.
Mhm.
Maybe I can do that too. And you absolutely can. And in the meantime, and meet wonderful people while
Mhm.
you're doing it.
Mhm.
You just have to be able to also accept and be humbled
Yeah.
sometimes at the same time. But yeah, I think right now veterinary medicine is really hurting,
Yes, it is.
and it's
And
hard to stay positive.
I feel like there's a lot of people who are suffering. I do feel like corporate medicine has damaged our soul a little bit,
Hmm.
because we are now being driven for numbers rather than purpose. And but I think there's a lot of veterinary team members and veterinary practices that are just quietly going along their business and having good team members and enjoying their clients and doing good medicine. And they're not making a lot of noise about it. They're just doing it. And
Yeah.
they need to talk a lot. They need to talk more about it. That yeah, we have, because I work with them. I know I've seen great
Mhm.
cultures. I've seen people who are doing amazing things, and I've seen clients who worship the ground these teams walk on. And it's not just that
Yes, and
they're
they need to bottle it and share it.
yeah, yeah, they need to. They absolutely need to. Well, Ellen, this has been great. Thank you personally for all you're doing for the cat and for teaching people about how to enjoy their profession more by not um, terrorizing cats in the room. I guess you could call it that. But any final words of wisdom, any favorite reading, any cat specific thing you would like to share with people that are you've considered to be the greatest resource?
Mm. Definitely look at the Feline VMA website. Okay. If you're in veterinary medicine and you are not a member, you should be a member. That is probably the gospel of feline medicine. All of the best minds
Mhm.
are members of the Feline VMA. There is so much information that they provide. There are so many free guidelines that are available to you and to the public to see. There's no
Mhm.
hiding this information. Um, and, if it's like a lot of the behavioral stuff you're asking me about, like one of my personal favorites is my friend Michael Delgado, How to Play with Your Cat. She's been a fantastic colleague for many years, and I absolutely love her, the way her no nonsense approaches about thinking about cats and why they tick the way that they do. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that was like my only feline reading so far last year, because I read so much journal reading that by the end of the day, sometimes I want some light reading and some trashy website reading like the Daily Fail,
Yeah.
something to not read about veterinary medicine
Yes.
anymore, but just kind of be like, oh, something to like wipe my brain free
Mhm.
of all of this education I'm dealing with. But
Mhm.
yeah, Feline VMA, please
Mhm.
become a member. You will learn so much, and the
Mhm.
group is so supportive, so
Yes.
supportive. And
Yeah.
they are actually branching out to like with the feline VTSs. They're like really branching out to us. They want technicians more involved and stuff. So be on the lookout for more
Good.
of that. Like they're really trying to build a better feline community.
I
And they
love it.
have been for many, many years. They're a
Yeah.
wonderful group of
I
people.
love, yeah, Jane Brunt's a friend of mine, and
Yeah, no,
yeah,
Jane.
so I always, when I used to send people to the feline practitioners
Yeah,
website for things, and especially for, they had a great video on the how to get your cat to the vet.
yep,
And do you remember the video that was Scotty Goes to the Vet?
yep.
I love that video. That was the funniest video to me because it was from the cat's point of view, to put a GoPro camera on a cat and then took them
Mm-hmm.
to the veterinary school. But
Yep.
it just really stuck with me, and I used to send it out and to clinicians and to clients so that they could see it. And then they revamped the website. So I haven't been to the new website yet, but I definitely will do that and recommend that for anybody out there in the world who wants to learn a little bit more
Yeah.
about how to do cat and do cat the right way. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellen, for being a guest on The Bend. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our interview today. And I hope you learned a little bit about how to make life easier for for the cats in your practice and also for yourself. And we're going to put Ellen's information in the show notes so she can be available. And we'll put her foundation information in there too. So you'll have that. But thank you very much again for today's episode of The Bend, and I look forward to seeing you maybe at VMX.
Oh, well, I'll be at Space Cats close to VMX. So I'll
Okay.
be in Cocoa Beach.
Okay.
But we'll be in the same area, but I won't unfortunately be at the
Won't
conference.
be at the conference. Well, I'm only there for an hour. So I'm sneaking into the Care Credit booth to promote the North American Association of Veterinary Receptionists. And then I'm going to Disney.
There you go. Have a great
All
time.
right. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us on The Bend.